There exists a love far greater than we will ever understand. A love prophesied for ages. Sent to disrupt the reign of darkness. One to challenge the skeptics. A love that quenches our thirst. Seeks after the sick. And mends the broken. A love that came to our rescue. Despite our betrayal and our denial, He bore the weight of our sin. Facing death by being nailed to a cross. And while darkness appeared victorious, this love emerged from the grave.
There exists a love far greater than you will ever understand. And that's why we're here. Happy Easter. This Sunday, Easter Sunday, is a Sunday we come together to remember the greatest gift ever given, Jesus. It's one of my favorite Sundays to speak. And when I first started speaking on a regular basis, I found myself wrestling with it, thinking like I had to come up with something new, something fresh, if you will. But what I've come to learn is that Jesus' love, Jesus' salvation, Jesus' kingdom, maybe another way we could say it is Jesus' gospel, needs no freshening up. It doesn't need any new form or method of presentation. It is full and complete in and of itself. So here we are, celebrating this gift. I was recently visiting with a really good friend from our fellowship right here. It was wrestling through just the reality, the tension that we see in the scriptures that Jesus has risen, he's alive, and that we actively get to participate with him in the expression of his love, in the announcement, the proclamation of his salvation, in the extension of his kingdom, and yet feeling as though we just also often are falling short. This is why Easter Sunday is so incredible. My experience has been that we really can't ever fully understand his love. And so it's more about this journey of understanding, knowing, finding greater hope, experience, and all these things today more so than we did yesterday. It's Easter Sunday, right? Also known as Resurrection Sunday. Here's what that tells me. Jesus is alive. He really is acting. He really is moving. He really is working. He really is leading. He is speaking to us today. And Easter Sunday invites us into this relationship. If you feel like you've known there's more, I just encourage you to continue to press on. He is so good. He is so kind. He longs to lead you there. And if you are at this place where you feel like you know him more today than yesterday, continue on, for that's the journey he longs to continue to take you on. You might be sitting there watching this right now, just thinking, well, how does it start? Where do we begin this relationship? Glad you asked. This is so important. There's this ancient account, if you will, of Adam and Eve. I'll be upfront, I believe this to be a literal account, but in so many ways, it's actually a figurative account of my life, of perhaps your life. Let me tell you what I mean by that. You ever notice how you inevitably seem to find yourself following or giving way to your fleshly, your kind of natural addictive ways, your broken tendencies, even perhaps your evil thoughts? It's a pattern that's existed since the beginning of time. God designed us. He created us. He created you. He did so, in fact, because he wanted to be in that relationship with you. But it wasn't that God left us. It was rather that we followed these ways. We call them a sinful way or a sinful nature, rather than stay in step in relationship with him. And God didn't want to leave us off to our own way. He wanted to ensure there was a way for us to come back to him. And that's where Jesus comes in. Jesus is God in flesh. Jesus came that he might show what it means to know God's love, God's salvation, God's kingdom. He lived it. He expressed it to the fullest level he could. Ultimately, by sacrificing his life and taking my sin, your sin, upon himself, dying in our place. He was then buried. But 3 days later, he rose. Easter Sunday, Resurrection Sunday. When you come to this place where you're willing to say, yeah, Jesus, thank you. Thank you that you paid for my sin, that you took it on, and are willing to acknowledge that you are sorry, to ask for forgiveness, to surrender your life. You come back into that relationship with God as you were always intended to. And so this Easter Sunday, this Resurrection Sunday, be reminded that Jesus is alive. And he leads us to this place where we get to know more fully his love, where we get to hope completely in his salvation, and where we get to experience the power and the presence of his kingdom. More today than yesterday, and more tomorrow than today. For we can never fully come to that place where we understand his love.
I am the one who sees you, the one who goes before you and beside you, the shadow in front and behind you. This is my gospel. I bring justice to the oppressed, hope from despair. I bring order out of chaos, peace to your city streets. This is my gospel. I have come for the poor and the brokenhearted, the one wrapped up in chains, whose head hangs heavy with shame. This is my gospel. I came to sit with the lonely, to walk with the weary, to break your chains and set you free, to lift your eyes and look at me. This is my gospel. Call out to me, the wind and wave breaker, the earth shaker, the one who makes your heart still and creates shade where you can hide. This is my gospel. I am the voice in the fire, the light in the dark, searching for the one who is lost. I am the one who runs towards you, with my arms reaching for you. This is my gospel. I am the one who restores your sight, bringing daybreak out of night. I have come to heal you, to make you whole. This is my gospel. I create beauty from ashes, meadows from dust, wipe the tear streaks from your face, opening the prison gates. This is my gospel. From my words rush living water. If you are thirsty, come, draw near, be filled, and never thirst again. This is my gospel. The world will never know a greater love than mine. I lay down my life for my friends. I am the beginning and the end. This is my gospel. My gospel is love.
Out of sadness from wherever you've been. Come broken hearted, let rescue begin. Come find your mercy, O sinner, come kneel. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. So lay down your burden, lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your face. A wanderer, come home. You're not too far. Lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are. There's hope for the hopeless and all those who've strayed. Come sit at the table, come taste the grace. There's rest for the weary, a rest that endures. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can cure. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your face. A wanderer, come home. You're not too far. Lay down your hurt, lay down your heart. Come as you are. Come as you are. Fall in his arms. Come as you are. There's joy for the morning. Oh, sinner, be still. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. your face, a wanderer come. Oh, you're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are.
This is his gospel. That good news would be preached to the poor, that the captives would be released, that the blind would see, that the oppressed would be set free. And Easter Sunday, it proves it. I mean, Jesus rose from the dead. His love, it's been displayed for us to see. His salvation is clear in his resurrection, and the journey into and actively a part of his kingdom is to be experienced right here, right now. Jesus' words in one of his first sermons bring this to life for us, this message of his love, salvation, and his kingdom. It's found in Luke chapter 4, and it reads like this. When he, Jesus, came to the village of Nazareth, his boyhood home, he went as usual to the synagogue on the Sabbath and stood up to read the scriptures. The scroll of Isaiah the prophet was handed to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where this was written. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim that the captives will be released, that the blind will see, and that the oppressed will be set free, and that the time of the Lord's favor has come. He rolled up the scroll, handed it back to the attendant, and sat down. All eyes in the synagogue looked at him intently. They began to speak to them. The scripture you've heard has been fulfilled this very day. Everyone spoke well of him and was amazed by the gracious words that came from his lips. So this is his gospel. It's a gospel where we get to experience Jesus' love, Jesus' salvation, and Jesus' kingdom right here and right now. When he brings this out in Luke chapter 4, the text actually starts with a really important point that we need to identify. It's this: Jesus was in his boyhood town of Nazareth. What this means for you and I is this: Jesus is very different from you and I in the West. We have to remember that he is a Middle Eastern, brown Hebrew rabbi. He doesn't think like you and I might in the West. He doesn't teach even like you and I might here in the West. He doesn't act like you and I might act here in the West. We gotta wrestle with this reality when it comes to the person of Jesus. One thing though that he would identify with us today is this: he understood division. I mean, he even in this text is gonna be confronted with it head on. See, the people whom he was a part of, the Hebrew people, had this thought, had this idea that they were the only ones who could know God, to experience his love and his salvation and his kingdom. And Jesus in just a moment's about to address that. But before he does, he uses this beautiful passage from the book of Isaiah. And it starts with this: that he's come to speak and to proclaim good news to the poor. Now, the physically poor, absolutely, without a doubt. In just a moment, we're going to read a story of someone who was poor that Jesus is bringing to the light. But not just the physically poor, definitely the spiritually poor as well. When I think of the spiritually poor, the person that comes to my mind is Nicodemus, the Pharisee, actually. The Pharisee who was the first person to actually hear the words, "For God so loved the world." Later, we actually see at the end of John's gospel, Nicodemus burying Jesus. See, he came for the poor in spirit. His kingdom, his spiritual kingdom, is a kingdom for those who recognize their need for God. It then speaks of the captives, that the captives would be released. Now, the physically captive, absolutely. I can't help but think of in the book of Acts, Peter and Paul, both apostles whom were in prison and miraculously freed. But I don't think he's speaking about just the physically captive, but the spiritual. I mean, after all, think of just a couple chapters later, his cousin John, who was in prison. Jesus doesn't even show up. He just says, I've come to speak. I've come to heal. And the blind are seeing. What more do you need? He doesn't even go to free his own cousin. Sure, I'm certain in his kingdom, he's doing a work of releasing the captives. And that the blind would see. The physically blind, definitely. I mean, even in Luke's gospel, he speaks of the many who were blind and that were healed. But interestingly enough, in Luke's gospel, there is only one written account of someone who is healed that is blind. I'm convinced in his kingdom, Jesus' kingdom, he's also coming to set the spiritually blind and give them sight. The spiritually blind makes me think of Paul in Acts as well. When he first saw Jesus, literally blinded, but his eyes, his spiritual eyes were opened, and he came to know the truth, that Jesus had come, that those who were blind might see. In Jesus' kingdom, his spiritual kingdom, he's come to bring sight. And then finally, there's this line that the oppressed would be freed. I think about the time that Jesus lived here. This is in the era of Rome, the oppression that his people were under. And not just the oppression from Rome, but this was the era of the rule, if you will, of the Pharisees, the oppression of the Jewish law and how it was handled. And so much so that Jesus physically did the act of turning the tables in the temple, an act where he would demonstrate his coming to free the oppressed. But in Jesus' life, he didn't dethrone Rome, not for a moment. But think of what he did do. He set countless people free from the rule of darkness, of the demonic, showing that spiritually his kingdom is a kingdom where the oppressed would be freed. This kingdom is a kingdom that Jesus invites you and me into to be actively a part of. This kingdom is a kingdom we get to actively be part of as we experience his salvation. And ultimately, it's a kingdom that has been fully revealed to us through God's love. His love that we celebrate today on Easter Sunday as Jesus proved his love, his salvation, and his kingdom are here for us to experience. This is his gospel, his love.
Singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. When I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of nothing can come close to your love. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. Oh no, no. No wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.
This is his gospel. His gospel is love. I don't know about you, but I'm willing to bet many, maybe most, perhaps all of you at some point have felt like me in that there's been times or seasons where you just feel like you don't belong. You're not a part. more so than maybe any other season in my life. I feel like that right now, actually. Politically, our world is in such turmoil. And I just feel like I don't belong, because for those who might suggest on one end of the spectrum that they're conservative, I'm just too liberal when it comes to especially how I feel about social justice and caring for those who can't care for themselves. But on the other hand, those who are at the other end of the spectrum, on what we might term the liberal side, I mean, I'm just too conservative when it comes to culture, when it comes to finances. Like, I just don't fit. I've been wrestling with that probably more than ever in this season, these last 2.5 years. Just don't belong. Maybe you felt like you don't belong. Maybe it has nothing to do with politics, though. Maybe it's, in your workplace. Maybe it's, in your neighborhood. Perhaps at home. Oh, I hope not, but maybe even in your church. Jesus, his gospel is a gospel of love. His gospel is a gospel of salvation, and his gospel is a gospel of the kingdom. Remember how I told you that Jesus had to deal with the division amongst his own people? In Luke 4, the very text we're talking about, you find him right in the thick of it. The passage that we were reading continues on like this. Then he said, "You will undoubtedly quote me this proverb, 'Physician, heal yourself,' meaning do miracles here in your hometown like those you did at Capernaum. But I tell you the truth, no prophet is accepted in his hometown. Certainly were many needy widows in Israel, in Elijah, one of the great prophets, in Elijah's time, when the heavens were closed for 3.5 years and a severe famine devastated the land. Yet Elijah was not sent to any of them. He was sent instead to a foreigner, a widow of Zarephath, in the land of Sidon. And many in Israel had leprosy in the time of the prophet Elijah, another great prophet. But the only one healed was Naaman, a Syrian. When they heard this, the people in the synagogue were furious. Jumping up, they mobbed him and forced him to the edge of a hill on the town where it was built. They intended to push him over the cliff, but he passed right through. How quick they went from being amazed to ready to kill him. But the question for us is why? It didn't bother them when he was preaching Isaiah 64. He said, "Today this is filled." His gospel of love, salvation, and his kingdom was here. What got to him was that he said it was for the foreigner, not just for them. He said it was for the outsider, not just for them. It rocked him to the core that Jesus, this rabbi, would say to them that God's love, God's salvation, his kingdom was for all, even those outside their Jewish ancestry. I think this lands for us today in this. Maybe we're sitting here asking, okay, well, yeah, okay, it's for all, fine, but think about it this way. Jesus' love, Jesus' salvation, Jesus' kingdom, guess what? It's actually for the people that you don't even like. If that's something that hits you and you're wrestling through it, I'd encourage you to do that. Jesus wants you to find freedom from that thought or those thinkings. But my biggest fear or my biggest concern today is that there's perhaps some of you who over the last 2.5 years became someone that you don't even like. the addictive ways, the brokenness that we all embody and have within us, the evil thoughts, that sinful nature we started with has flared up. Jesus' gospel is a gospel of love, salvation, and the kingdom. It really is available for you today. And so if this is you, and you're at that place where you know you need help, I want to pray with you. And don't let it end with this prayer. Press in and seek the help. Because Jesus has come for you. Come that you might know his love. Come that you might know his salvation. The hope that that brings. And come that you might experience his kingdom. Would you bow? Jesus, we're sorry. Jesus, would you forgive us? It's been all too easy these last couple years to become someone we never wanted to be, to not even like who we are. So the day, once again, we just say, our lives are yours. We admit we're poor in spirit. We come to receive. We know that we're captives. Release us. We know we are blinded. May we see the goodness of who you are. We know we're oppressed. Free us. Jesus, your gospel is love. Your gospel brings salvation, and your gospel invites us into the kingdom. And today, we long to step further into that. We long to experience more of it tomorrow than we are now. Would you do a work within us that we might, this Easter, this Resurrection Sunday, come to know in a fresh and a new way that you, God, are alive and with us now. In your name we pray. Amen.